Take it off. My mother's fingers pinched the sleeve of my dress blues, like the fabric had burned her. I looked at her reflection in the mirror first, because turning around felt too much like surrender. Behind me, my father stood in front of the bridal suite door with his arms folded, blocking the only exit. "Mom," I said quietly, "Ethan asked me to wear this." Her mouth tightened. "Ethan is getting married today. He does not need you turning his wedding into a military event." My father's voice dropped lower. "The photographer has already been told. No military shots, no salutes, no spectacle." That was when I understood. They were not asking. They were managing me. My mother held up the champagne-colored dress she had bought without asking my size, the same one still zipped inside a plastic garment bag on the chair. "You can change in 5 minutes. Nobody has to know." I looked down at the silver star pinned to my chest. Neither of them looked at it. Not once. They looked at the uniform like it was a stain. 2 hours before my brother's wedding, inside a room filled with hairspray, perfume, and white roses, my parents were begging me to hide the one part of my life I had earned without them. Dad exhaled sharply. "Chantal, don't make yourself the story." I turned then. Why would my uniform make me the story? Mom's eyes flicked toward the door. "Because the military is embarrassing in a setting like this." The sentence landed harder than I let show. They had smiled all week about Ethan's promotion. They had mentioned the venue cost to anyone close enough to listen. They had praised the guest list, the flowers, the wine, the string quartet. But when I walked in wearing my dress blues, the room turned cold. I reached for the printed wedding program on the vanity, mostly to steady my hands. Then I saw it. My name was no longer listed under sibling toast. Captain Chantal Reeves had become just Chantal Reeves in small print near the family seating. I picked up the place card beside it. My rank had been removed there too. "When did this change?" I asked. Mom's face went still. Dad stepped forward. "Your brother has enough pressure today." That isn't what I asked. Mom folded the champagne dress over her arm, smoothing it as if the answer was hidden in the fabric. "We adjusted a few things so the day would feel more balanced." Balanced. That was the word they used whenever they meant silent. My phone buzzed on the vanity. 3 missed calls from a number I didn't recognize. Then one text from Ethan, sent at 11:43 the night before. "Please don't let Mom change what I asked you to do." For a moment, the bridal suite noise outside the door seemed to disappear. The laughter, the footsteps, the soft panic of a wedding morning. I read the message twice. Then I looked at my parents. Dad's jaw flexed. "Answer us, Chantal." I set the program down. I removed my mother's hand from my sleeve, button by button, gently enough that she couldn't call it rude. Then I straightened the silver star on my chest. "I am answering," I said. And I walked toward the ceremony doors. But if Ethan wanted me there in uniform, why were my parents so desperate to stop me? The hallway outside the bridal suite was narrow and dim, lined with framed photos of other weddings, where every family looked polished enough to be printed in a magazine. I stood there for one breath. Then another. From inside the chapel, the piano began playing the first soft notes of the prelude. Guests were already being seated. Somewhere behind the double doors, Ethan was probably adjusting his tie, smiling nervously, unaware that our parents had turned his wedding into another test I was supposed to fail quietly. My mother's words kept echoing. The military is embarrassing. I had heard versions of it for years. When I enlisted, Mom called it acting out. When I earned my commission, Dad told people it was a leadership program. When I deployed, they told neighbors I worked in logistics, like the uniform was some temporary costume I would outgrow if everyone ignored it long enough. Ethan had always been the easy one for them to explain. Good grades, good job, good suit, good smile. I was the daughter they lowered their voices about. Chantal. I turned. Mara stood at the end of the hallway in her wedding robe, veil pinned carefully into her dark hair, one hand gripping a bouquet that clearly wasn't supposed to be with her yet. She froze when she saw me. Not with embarrassment. With relief. "You came anyway," she whispered. I frowned. "Anyway." She glanced behind her before stepping closer. "Did you get the updated reception schedule?" "No." Her face changed. The answer was small, but it cracked something open between us. Mara lowered her voice. "Ethan planned something after dinner, something with the guys from the unit. Your mom said you became uncomfortable with the attention and asked to cancel it." I stared at her. I didn't even know there was something to cancel. Mara's fingers tightened around the bouquet stems. "She said you were upset. She said wearing the uniform would make it worse." I looked down the hallway toward the chapel doors. The missing toast. The changed program. The seating card without my rank. The photographer being told not to take military shots. Now this. "They used my name," I said. Mara swallowed. "I think they used Ethan's too." Before I could ask what she meant, my father appeared from around the corner. His face softened instantly for Mara. "There you are. Everyone's looking for the bride." Mara straightened, but she did not move away from me. "Martin, why was Chantal's toast removed?" Dad's smile held for half a second too long. "Timing issue. The coordinator made a call." "That's not what Ethan told me." His eyes flicked to me. There it was. The cold part. "Mara," he said gently, "you need to go inside. This is not something you should carry into your ceremony." Mara hesitated, looking at me like she wanted to say more, but one of her bridesmaids rushed in from the side hall, whispering that the officiant was ready. Mara squeezed my hand once before she left. The second she disappeared, Dad's voice lost all warmth. "You have 5 minutes." I faced him. "For what?" "To change," he nodded toward the bridal suite. "Or you will be seated in the back row until the family photos are done." I almost laughed, not because it was funny, but because he sounded so certain the room still belonged to him. "You're going to move me at my brother's wedding." "If you force me to protect him from a scene, yes." "The scene is you lying." His nostrils flared. "Careful." That one word pulled me back 20 years. Careful was what he said when I questioned a family decision. Careful was what he said when I stood too tall, spoke too clearly, refused to be corrected in public. But I was not 17 anymore. And this was not his hallway. I stepped around him. He shifted to block me. For 1 second, we stood face to face, close enough that I could see the pulse jumping in his neck. Then the chapel doors opened ahead of us, and the first bridesmaid began walking down the aisle. Dad leaned in. "Last chance, Chantal." I did not answer. I walked past him. Behind me, I heard the sharp tap of his thumb against his phone screen. When I glanced back, he was sending a text. "Stop her before she reaches the aisle." The chapel doors opened wider than I expected. Not because they were pulled open for me. Because they were already opening for the next bridesmaid. And suddenly, there was no more hallway. Only light. Only 143 faces, turning at once. The sound inside the room didn't stop completely. It collapsed. The piano kept playing, but softer now, like even the musician had lost confidence in the notes. I stepped in anyway. The air changed immediately. I felt it before I saw it. Whispers started in the second row. Then the third. Then silence, spreading outward like a decision no one wanted to say out loud. My dress blues caught the light from the chandeliers. So did the silver star. And for the first time, I noticed how carefully my parents had arranged everything else in this room to avoid exactly that reflection. Denise was seated near the front, spine straight, smile frozen in place like she had practiced it. She did not look at me. Not directly. Not at first. A wedding coordinator rushed forward from the side aisle, hand lifted in a polite panic. "Captain Reeves," she said quickly, "there seems to be a seating adjustment. If you could just wait outside for. I'm in the right place, I said. Her smile tightened. We were told. Before she could finish, someone stood up in the third row. An older man in a dark suit. Then another beside him. Then several, more scattered through the room, like a ripple that refused to stay contained. I didn't recognize them at first. Not until one of them straightened his posture like he was back under command. Sergeant Major Alvarez. He didn't speak right away. He just looked at me. Then he placed his hand over his chest and said, loud enough for the entire chapel to hear. Silver Star in the room. The words didn't echo. They landed. Hard. The coordinator froze mid-step. The string quartet stopped playing entirely. Denise finally turned her head. Her face went pale in a way I had never seen before. Martin stood halfway up from his seat, confusion turning into something sharper. What is this? Someone whispered behind me. Then another veteran stood. Then another. 11 in total. Not together. Not coordinated. Just responding. Like something in them recognized something in me before the room did. A man in the fourth row wiped his hands down his thighs before standing, as if he was steadying himself. A woman near the aisle nodded once, eyes locked on my uniform. Respect, not performance. Recognition, not curiosity. From the front, Ethan turned. And stopped. He wasn't smiling. He wasn't confused either. He was staring at me like the floor under him had shifted without warning. His lips moved. No sound came out at first. Then again. Where's your seat? He mouthed. I looked down the front row and saw it. My name card. Moved. Rewritten. No rank. No designation. Just placed beside a distant cousin I hadn't spoken to in years. Not an accident. A decision. The coordinator tried again, voice thinner now. We can fix this quickly if everyone just. Sergeant Major Alvarez didn't take his eyes off me. Instead, he spoke to Ethan. Sir, he said evenly, we were told Captain Reeves declined recognition. The room shifted again. That sentence hit harder than the silence. Ethan's expression broke in real time. Confusion first. Then disbelief. Then something colder. He turned slowly. Toward the front row. Toward my parents. And in a voice that cut through the entire chapel, he said, What did you do? The chapel held its breath, like it was afraid to move wrong. Ethan didn't return to the altar. He walked straight down the aisle. Every step closer to me made the room more unstable, like the ceremony itself was losing its structure. He stopped in front of me. Not at a distance. Close enough that I could see the strain in his jaw. Did you cancel anything? He asked. I shook my head once. No. His eyes flicked over my uniform, the silver star, the veteran still standing. Then he said it slower. Mom said you refused the tribute. I felt something tighten behind my ribs. I didn't know there was a tribute. Silence. Then Ethan turned. Slowly. Toward Denise and Martin. The entire room followed his gaze. Denise lifted her chin immediately, already trying to hold control in a room that was slipping away from her. It was for timing, she said quickly. She wasn't comfortable with attention. We were protecting the flow of the ceremony. Martin stepped in beside her. This is not the place for accusations. But it was already too late. Phones came out in the 5th row. Then the 6th. Recording started. Mara stepped forward from the altar for the first time, her voice shaking but clear. She told me something different, Mara said. They said she asked for it to be removed. They used her name. That landed harder than anything else so far. A photographer lowered her camera completely, refusing to shoot. The wedding coordinator took a step back from Martin. I was given instructions from the groom's parents, she said quietly. I was told Captain Reeves was not to be included in main photos. Ethan didn't look at her. He looked at Alvarez. Why are they really here? He asked. Alvarez exhaled once, steady. They're here because you invited us, he said, and because your sister never told you how many of us made it home because of her. Martin snapped, this is inappropriate. But Alvarez stepped forward. Not aggressively. Just enough that the room felt it. We came because Captain Reeves pulled men out of a kill zone when no one else could. Ethan's face changed again. Like he was finally seeing the gap between what he was told and what was real. Before Alvarez could continue, one of the veterans stepped into the aisle and said clearly, Captain Reeves, permission to tell them what happened that night. Chantal didn't answer immediately. The question hung in the aisle like it had weight. Permission to tell them what happened that night. For the first time since I entered the chapel, my hands felt like they belonged to something heavier than a uniform. Not fear. Not hesitation. Memory. Ethan turned slightly toward me, quieter now. Chan, what are they talking about? I looked at him, then at the 11 veterans still standing. No one told you, I asked. His silence was answer enough. Behind us. Denise's chair scraped the floor as she stood. This is absurd. This is supposed to be a wedding. Alvarez didn't look at her. He looked at me. Waiting. I gave a small nod. Permission granted, I said. The room changed again, but this time it didn't tighten. It opened. Alvarez stepped forward into the aisle, slow and controlled, like he was returning to ground he had walked through once already. That night, he began, we were moving a convoy through a corridor that was supposed to be clear. No dramatics. No performance. Just facts that pulled the air out of the room. 2 vehicles got hit. Communications went down within minutes. We had wounded pinned in a collapsed structure while the rest of us were taking fire from a ridge line. A woman near the back covered her mouth. Alvarez continued. Command called for extraction, but the corridor was too hot. Nobody was moving in. Ethan's hand dropped slightly from where it had been clenched. Alvarez turned his head just enough to glance at me. Captain Reeves didn't wait for permission. Denise let out a sharp, disbelieving laugh. This is not. But no one was listening to her anymore. The veterans were. The guests were. Even the officiant had stepped back from the altar completely. Alvarez's voice lowered. She crossed open ground twice, pulled wounded men out under fire, and then stayed in the kill zone to guide the extraction because nobody else could see the structure from the ridge. A pause. Then the part no one was ready for. One of those men was Caleb Morgan. Ethan's head snapped up. Slowly, someone in the second row stood. A man with a cane. Caleb. He hadn't been part of the ceremony. Not on any list I had seen. But now he was there, gripping the pew like it was the only thing keeping him upright. I was supposed to die there, he said quietly. The chapel went completely still. Caleb swallowed hard. She didn't tell anyone what she did, he continued. Not even after, not even when she got the silver star. Ethan looked at him, like the room had tilted again. You're alive because of her, Ethan asked. Caleb nodded once. Then added, softer, almost broken. And she never once told her family the real version of that night, because she said she didn't want it to become something people talked about over dinner. That sentence landed differently. Because it wasn't about war anymore. It was about silence. Ethan turned slowly back toward me. His voice came out lower now. You let them think you did nothing. Before I could answer, Mara stepped down from the altar. Her dress brushed the aisle as she walked. She stopped beside Ethan. They didn't just hide it, she said. They rewrote it. Your mom told me Chantal refused the tribute. She told the coordinator to remove her from photos. Ethan's expression shifted again. Something cracking through the middle. Denise took a step forward, voice sharp now. We were protecting this wedding from becoming about something else. That finally made someone laugh in disbelief. Not because it was funny. Because it was too late. Ethan turned fully toward her. Slowly. Like he had to confirm what he was seeing. You told me she didn't want to be honored, he said. Denise lifted her chin. She doesn't need to be the center of attention. Ethan blinked once, then shook his head slightly. No, he said quietly. You just didn't want her to be. A silence followed that wasn't empty anymore. It was full. Full of guests recording. Full of veterans standing. Full of a truth that had finally stopped being negotiable. Ethan stepped away from the altar completely and walked toward me again. This time slower. Different. When he reached me, he took something from his jacket pocket. His boutonniere. He looked at me for a long second, then pinned it beneath my medals. Not ceremonial. Not performative. Just brother to sister. Behind us, Denise whispered his name like a warning. But he didn't turn. He just said quietly, "This wedding doesn't happen without you being seen." And for the first time since I walked into that chapel, the room stopped trying to erase me. It started adjusting around me instead.